with the kind of win that the Eagles had over the Saints, which was very surprising, that kind of leaves the Philadelphia Eagles in kind of a dilemma, I think. Like you have, on one hand, you have Jalen Hurts, who clearly gave them a boost and just did remarkably well against the tough Saints defense. And then on the other hand, you have Carson Wentz, who has that huge contract, but just has underperformed throughout the whole season. So it's really a tough one going forward for the Eagles. So yeah, what is your view on that whole situation?
Yeah, I think it was actually a very interesting, almost an experiment where you take Wentz out and put Hurts in with the exact same variables. Every year, all year, and even some of last year, everyone was saying that Wentz has no weapons, he has no run game, his offensive line's bad, the coaching's bad, and you kind of just took Wentz out and just put Hurts right into his place essentially, and Hurts looked 100 times better than Wentz, and that kind of depends on who you listen to. But there was people saying that Wentz maybe isn't running the offense like Peterson's telling him to. He's changing plays and making calls. But yeah, I mean, what Hurts did was amazing against pretty much the number one defense in the NFL as well. It wasn't like he's just performed well against the Bengals or anything like that. This was a really good Saints team. Obviously, they are a bit undermanned on the offensive side, but defensively, they're obviously one of the best. And they'd actually gone 55 games without allowing a 100-yard rusher, and the Eagles had two. Sanders and Hurts both went for over 100 yards, which was just amazing, really. But yeah, Hurts definitely gave them a big boost, and I think he was great.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, like the stats of Jalen Hurts, they don't actually blow you away. Like he had only like 167 like throwing, like passing yards, but like you mentioned before, he had over 100 yards rushing, and he was actually the first quarterbacks in 7 decades to rush for more than 100 yards in his first NFL start. So that kind of shows you, yeah, like you said, that kind of the area where you would think Carson Wentz would rush more as well, because he's that mobile quarterback. And towards the beginning of his career, he was running quite a lot. So that's certainly an area where Hurts improved and helped the team out. And also kind of his leadership and his ability to improve the team. Like Miles Sanders was talking after the game, and he said like that Hurts played awesome, and he's very confident, and he's supposed to be he was a natural leader. That kind of also kind of a dig towards Wentz, because there's also always that criticism that he might not actually be a good leader, and as a quarterback, that's almost one of the most important things, to be able to lead the offense and lead a team.
Yeah, and also, yeah, people are saying his relationship with Doug Peterson isn't very good. And if you kind of just take almost a step back and just look at the whole picture, when you look at everything that Wentz was doing earlier this season that was hurting the Eagles, whether it was holding onto the ball too long, he's got the most sacks this year. Some of those were for obviously on the offensive line, but yeah, he holds the ball way too long. He was turning the ball over, often in Eagles territory. Just making dumb plays, fumbling all the time, and really hurting the team. And like you said, Hurts didn't do anything amazing, especially not with his arm. He just didn't do anything stupid, and I think that's all the Eagles have needed for a while. The defense isn't amazing, but it's pretty good. But all Hurts did, he was able to, just do what needed to be done. There was nothing flashy about it. He just got it done. And also, Hurts wasn't even sacked. So Wentz got sacked. I think it's over 40 times this year. Hurts didn't even get sacked yesterday. And again, this is playing one of the best defenses in the NFL, who are known for getting after the quarterback. I know obviously it helps. He's mobile, but Wentz isn't exactly a statue himself. But yeah, really impressed with Hurts. And now I don't think the Eagles have much of a dilemma in terms of the rest of this season. I think Hurts has definitely got the job for now. I can't see any way they start Wentz again. But yeah, it will be very interesting going forward. Like you mentioned, his massive contract. Very interested to see how the Eagles kind of go about that.
Yeah, I mean, he like if they would trade him before, like on March 17th next year, they would save the team around 24.5 million against the salary cap, but they would still have like a dead money of 34 million. So it's really a tough contract to even move. There's not that many teams that could actually afford to take him on right now. Like I read, I mean, obviously, like for you, maybe that's obviously interesting. Like the maybe obvious like trade candidate would be the Indianapolis Colts for him to kind of reunite with Frank Reich and yeah, with him he had probably the most success in his entire career. And obviously with Philip Rivers only being there for 1 year and being that he's already 39, that's kind of the obvious spot that I could see him. But there's also like the talk of maybe the Patriots, the Bears, the Broncos, or maybe even the 49ers looking at him.
Yeah, or Jags even. I've heard the kind of Jags being thrown around. But yeah, just in terms of the Colts, I mean, I personally wouldn't want to see that. His contract's huge, and when someone's paid that much money, they're supposed to be able to make up for other shortcomings on the roster where you've spent all that money on the quarterback. Wentz not only doesn't make up for it, he probably is the problem, or definitely causes most of them. And yeah, it's a trend with the Eagles, whether it's been Foles or Hurts at the moment, even Josh McCown for that 3/4 of the playoff game against Seattle. But every time they put someone else in at quarterback who isn't Carson Wentz, he looked better than Carson Wentz. And I don't think it's much of a coincidence now. The Eagles are in a seriously tough spot because yeah, you mentioned it's 40 mil, or sorry, 34 mil in dead cap to trade him. They wouldn't cut him, but if they did, it would cost them 60 million in dead cap. So I can't see them doing that either. And yeah, I just don't think there's a suitable taker. One idea I kind of heard floated around is if somebody, maybe even like the Jets with a lot of cap space, would even consider a deal like the Brock Osweiler deal, where the Texans actually sent, I can't forget who it was now. Was it the Bengals? Or they sent somebody, Brock Osweiler, and a draft pick just for taking the contract.
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, you kind of need almost like an NBA kind of trades because in the NBA that's kind of usual. What happens that you send a player with a high cap number to a different team, but you kind of send them an incentive as well for them to take on the contract in form of a draft pick. So that yeah, that might be one of the only options that the Eagles have to actually get rid of Wentz's contract if they choose to do so. Because like before, like were always these people that defended Wentz and just blamed like Doug Peterson or Howie Roseman on how the team was put together and that he kind of had not enough weapons or that the O line wasn't good enough. But then whenever, yeah, like you said, whenever you see a backup doing better than him with like the same circumstances, it really comes down to that it's all kind of on Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and a kind of fun stat is in games where the Eagles don't have Wentz kind of after he's been injured or benched in this case, Eagles are 11-3. So yeah, I mean that pretty much says it all. If you're able to win 11 games with backups and Wentz is a little bit over 500 for his career, yeah, I think that pretty much says everything. But yeah, I mean, I personally, if I had to kind of guess, I would say that Wentz stays in Philly, at least for the whole of next year, just because I can't see any kind of viable way that they would move him. And when Hurts was drafted, obviously Roseman gave up a second round pick, raised quite a few eyebrows. There was people that were saying they drafted him to be their sort of Taysom Hill guy to come in on gadget plays because we've seen New Orleans have some success with that. Or there was people that were saying, Wentz was starting to regress last year, especially towards the end of last year. Um, and the kind of coaching staff weren't happy with him, and they drafted Hurts to be his successor eventually. And I've got to say the latter looks more likely now, having seen Hurts play well and see Wentz regress even further to pretty much the worst starting quarterback in the whole NFL. And yeah, it looks like a pretty smart move now.
Yeah, I think towards like, I mean, this season I cannot see Wentz being back on the center. So I think they're gonna just finish out with Hurts. And yeah, I don't think they're going to move him just yet. I think there might be like just a very open quarterback competition next offseason to kind of determine who's going to be the starter again. But if Hurts wins the job next offseason, then obviously there's no point of having like Carson Wentz as your backup with like over 20 million, with an over 20 million salary cap hit just for having him as a backup. So I think they will definitely have to do something next season.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Hurts is the long-term answer. I mean, having watched him through college at Alabama and then Oklahoma, he runs a very simple system. It's normally look at the first read. If it's not there, scramble. And you kind of saw that again, maybe slightly more refined on the win against the Saints. But yeah, take nothing away from him. He played very well that game, but still not 100% convinced he will be the long-term answer. But he's definitely better than what they've got right now. And if the Eagles can somehow manage to get into the playoffs, which is always a possibility when you're playing in the NFC East this year, I think Hurts they'll ride Hurts all the way as far as he can take them.
Yeah, definitely an interesting thing to watch in the next weeks, and then obviously towards the off season as well.